Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is a case that's actually been dubbed, or is known as by those people who actually know it, the Kiss and Kill murder. And it is the murder of one Betty Williams. Now this case is very tragic. Looking into it, you'll see as we get through it, but I just wish that there was more help out there for Betty. Like I said, you'll understand what I'm going on about as we actually jump into the case. This was actually suggested by my Patreon, K Ewell, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. They felt like it would be a very interesting case to share with you guys, because maybe not a lot of people have heard of this one, and that's what it seems like. It's not very well covered. There's only a couple of articles sort of on it, so you know, maybe you won't have heard this one before. And it may be new to a lot of you guys, so let's just jump right in. Elizabeth Jean Williams, who was known by everyone as Betty, was born on the 11th of August in 1943 to parents John and Mary Bell. This was in Marion in Illinois. She was actually the first child of what would end up to be 4 children. I did also read that one of her brothers, called John, was born in 1946, and sadly he passed away in 47, so he only lived a year, unfortunately. She, like her siblings, was raised in a very Baptist family, very religious family, with her father being a carpenter. But unfortunately the family didn't have much money, and so Mary also got a job in JCPenney, and that did help a lot. It just meant that they were able to sort of get by at that point. They weren't really wealthy, really well off, but they were surviving, I guess. Now, Betty, as she got older, it became very apparent that she was very different to everyone around her. I guess you could say that she was born in the wrong era. That's like the impression that I got, because pretty much everyone was a certain way, and Betty was completely different to everyone around her. At least that's how I would put it anyway. So she would often wear a t-shirt, jeans without a bra on, and that wasn't done. People were walking around in these sort of matching jumpers and saddle shoes. So everyone were pretty much dressed like that. As you can imagine, you've probably got a picture in your head right now, right, about it. That's what I did anyway. And she was just a wild card, essentially. The sad thing about that is that she was very much classed as an outcast because of that, because of how she dressed. And it wasn't only how she dressed, it was how she was as well, like her attitude. Not attitude, just her personality, just her as a person. Because she was so different, a lot of the people around her did not like her. And I mean, that's society today, isn't it? You know, I know we accept a lot more differences now, but there's still a lot of issues in the world where if you're too different, people don't like you, kind of thing. And it's so devastatingly sad. And it shouldn't happen, but unfortunately it does. Betty was very anti-racism, and I guess at that time there was a lot of segregation between black people and white people. You know, they probably weren't allowed to go to the same schools together, you know, to mix. They weren't, I know that there was some train segregation, like they had to queue up in a different line. They weren't allowed to queue up with the white people, and she hated all of that, which good for her, you know, you go girl, don't we all hate things like that, how it used to be. I know there's still a lot of racism and things in the world now, but obviously we have improved so much since then. Not only was she anti-racism, she was also something which I believe her father really did not appreciate, and that was anti-religious. Now, that's a word, right? I hope that's a word, because I've just used it as a word. If not, you know what I mean. But obviously, he was very religious. The family was very religious. Even a lot of the people around them, religion was just everywhere, and it was huge. And Betty was she would openly say that she wasn't religious at all. She didn't believe in any of it. I know that her father did have issues with Betty's attitude, and you know, he would have had a lot of issues with that, I imagine. Whatever he thought was immoral in the eyes of God, he did not approve of, and Betty did a lot of things that I guess he felt like were immoral. I'm not saying they're immoral, but I guess that's just how he felt. And to him, pretty much everything that Betty did was wrong. It opposed what he believed. It opposed what he thought that she should be like, even though she should be herself, and each person should be able to do what they want. If they don't believe in religion, fair enough. If they do believe in religion, fair enough. It's their choice. They have a choice to be their own person. And the fact that he was trying to mold them, I get it. If you're very religious, you'll want your kids to follow in that religion, but you can't force them. If they don't believe, they don't believe, and that is that. But in them days, a lot of people would be less accepting of things like that. Betty would also do things like sneak out at night, which a lot of teenagers do, have done, still do, will do. Pretty normal thing to do, but obviously her father he hated that, and she would sneak out and she would spend some time with boys, and she would end up having sexual relations with those boys. Now, it was a very taboo thing to do in the area, in the school that she was in, because at that time, people had boyfriends and they were the only ones that you would have sexual relationships with. It was very prudish. I don't know whether that's even the right word, but you know what I mean, like secretive. You wouldn't talk about it. Nobody wanted to discuss it or anything like that, whereas Betty would. She would talk about it. She didn't have a boyfriend at the time, so she would go and sleep with guys, and she didn't care. She didn't care what anyone thought about her, which is really good. You shouldn't care what people think about you. You should just be you and not give a damn about what anyone else thinks. She was just being herself, and she wasn't ashamed of it, and that's a girl after our own hearts here. The problem with, I guess you only see it as a problem if you see it as a problem. With her being herself, she didn't make many friends, because they were all liked the one set way that you had to go down this line and you had to be a sheep and follow that, and she was not. She was off on her own, doing her own line, and it made people not like her because of that. She was just so different, and people didn't accept her, which is just so sad. Betty also had these big dreams of becoming this huge actress. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to move to New York. In school, which I haven't actually mentioned, she went to Odessa High School. They had like a theatre club, and she was part of that. She was doing acting roles in that. She got some pretty big lead roles in like Romeo and Juliet. She would get Juliet, things like that. And she absolutely loved it. She had plans though, because her family wasn't very wealthy. She figured that she wouldn't be able to go to college, so she ended up getting a part-time job, and all of the money she could save, she did save, she put away in preparation for her to follow her dreams. She was going to stay living at home. She was going to go to a local college so that she didn't have to pay rent and things like that. Or maybe she'd just give her mum and dad a bit of money, but it wouldn't be very much. She'd stay there, she'd go to college, and then she would carry on with her job, save up all that money again, and eventually when she had enough money, she was going to move down to New York and try and get into Broadway. She had these huge plans. She knew exactly what she wanted out of life, and she was gonna go for it. So, you're thinking, what goes wrong here? Obviously, if nothing went wrong, I won't be talking about her today. And let me tell you what actually went wrong was that she fell in love. Now, I'm not saying love is a bad thing by any means, but I'm just saying that, I guess for Betty, it unfortunately was the start of a downward spiral, which would end in absolute tragedy. So the boy that she fell in love with was a jock. He was called John McHerring, and he was actually on the football team. He was a very popular guy. So you can imagine completely the opposite to Betty. She was very unpopular. Nobody, unfortunately, really liked her. Whereas Mac, as he was known by his friends, and that's how we'll call him, he was, he wasn't the best footballer in the world, but he was loved by loads of people. He was a very straight and narrow guy he was just popular. And I guess you could say opposites attract, because in 1960, they sort of were put in front of each other, and they thought that they really liked each other. Now, personally, I feel like, there could be two things here. Either Betty liked Mac more than he liked her, because he would kind of hide their relationship. Now, it also could have been that he was embarrassed, in a sense, which is awful to say, but peer pressure, being popular, going out with somebody that isn't popular and who is very taboo, it puts a lot of pressure on people, so that might also be why he hid it. But he didn't tell anyone. He hid their relationship. It was a big thing back in them days, to, especially at that school anyway, to give them these Letterman jackets, like the football jerseys, to the girlfriend. They would walk around in it, and it showed that, you know, that was your girlfriend. He never did anything like that. He didn't bring her to meet the parents. Every time they met, it would be like secret. He didn't bring her to parties or anything like that. He was just very hush hush. And again, there could be either reason for that, so believe what you want on that one. It's either that he didn't like her as much as she liked him, or that he was unfortunately sort of embarrassed, or just didn't want to deal with people's flack that they were going to give him, or potentially give him at least. Now, I don't know why Betty did this. Whether it was because she was just a teenager, she was 17. We make mistakes, come on, you've done it, I've done it, everyone's done it, maybe. But you're allowed to make mistakes. Either way, she ended up having sexual relations with another boy that wasn't Mac, who wasn't her boyfriend. It was actually a good friend of Mac's, and she ends up going and having sexual relations with him. Now, as you can imagine, Mac found out, and he was pretty upset, and he ended up breaking it off with her. Again, I don't know why Betty did that. Whether she was being just a teenager, or whether it was because she was fed up of Mac hiding their relationship, it's just speculation at this point. I don't actually know, so take that as you will. Choose whichever one you want to believe, I guess. Mac moved on very quickly. He ended up getting a girlfriend that was more, that he could show people, that I guess was better suited for him. I don't want to say that because it's just not very nice to say, but you know what I mean. A girl that he would give his jacket to. That's how I'm going to put it. Betty was absolutely devastated. She really wanted Mac back. But it did seem like they stayed as friends. They broke up, but they still stayed friends, and I guess that was probably harder for Betty because she really wanted him. He had moved on, but she still saw him all the time. She was in the theatre group with him. She would have to see him all the time there. He would still give her lifts home and things like that. So it just probably made her feel more upset about it all, spending time with him but not actually being with him. And then not only was her relationship gone, her theatre dreams also started to crumble because she was a senior, and when she got to senior year, she actually got a new drama teacher. And this drama teacher did not think that she was as good as, I guess, the old drama teacher thought she was. She would get all the lead roles and things like that. And now they were auditioning for a play, and she basically put her as a stage manager. She wasn't even in the play at all, which obviously Betty had these massive dreams of becoming an actress, and so that really upset her too. Then on top of that, her dad goes through her room. He goes through her drawers, he finds a diary, and he reads it. And inside that diary, she actually details everything private in her life, which she detailed the sexual relations that she was having with these different boys, and he read it all. All that really freaked him out, and that meant that her home life began to crumble a little bit as well. I don't really know why he did that. Whether because he felt like she was acting out, he needed to know what she was doing, or whether... From what I've seen, Betty wasn't really acting too differently at that point, so I don't think he was super worried about a mental state or a physical state or anything like that. That's just my assumption from what I've read and from what I've looked into, so please don't quote me on that. But it's a massive invasion of privacy. I get it. If you're worried about your kid, they are showing signs of mental health issues or physical issues or anything, and you feel like you need to know what is going on in their head, then okay, I guess maybe then. But any other time, that is a massive invasion of privacy, and I at least don't believe that that should be done. How many things she wrote in there and how personal that was to her, and to know that her dad had read it all, it must have just been so crushing for Betty. And it would have been really awkward too. I bet it would be anyway. Like, I don't know how many boys she had relations with, but knowing that your dad knew every single detail about it, no thank you. By the end of the year 1960 still, Betty was very depressed, and she actually began talking about taking her own life. Let me just put a warning here. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about, not into detail, about somebody taking their own life, because that's what she was talking about. So I'm going to go into that, and yeah, you'll find out. But I just want to put a warning, a disclaimer here, just to let you know that that is the path that we are going to be going down, just in case anyone wants to jump out of here right now. This is your chance. So it initially started out with small little things. She would say things like, I wonder what heaven was like, and heaven must be nice. And then she'd say things like, I'd be better off dead. And people didn't think much of it. Betty was very quirky and would say these random things. It was just Betty being Betty. She was a bit of an oddball, and that was that. Nobody took it seriously. And sometimes people do say things like that in the spur of the moment, like when they're angry or really upset, you might say, oh, I'd be better off dead, but it doesn't mean you mean it. Do you know what I mean? I did read that she attempted it once. I believe she took some aspirin. I think I read that it was 4, which isn't enough, I don't think. But there you go. I also read that she had thought about throwing herself off the auditorium roof. But these things were just thoughts. She never actually did them. She began telling people about her thoughts, and basically anyone that would bend an ear to her, she would tell them about these thoughts, these dark thoughts she was having. And again, they just figured she was joking, Betty being Betty. She would actually go up to people and be like, fancy killing me? Seriously, she would ask people if they would actually kill her. And that just is so sad, because if somebody's coming up to you asking you if you're going to kill them, if you would kill them, they clearly need help. They clearly need mental health. Help with their mental health, I guess. And I know back then it was very taboo. There wasn't a lot of help out there at all, but it's just so sad when you look at these cases and see what happened to them, and when you know how much help there is now, and all of the professionals out there that are there to help you when you have such dark thoughts. And it's just so heartbreaking going back and seeing all that and seeing how much she suffered and things like that and what she was thinking. She was breaking down, and nobody was even really taking her seriously. Then one day after theatre was over, Mac offered to take Betty home, which again, I've already said that they did quite often. They were still friends. And this is when, in the car journey, she actually asked Mac if he would be willing to kill her. He was like, what? Confused, you know, I'm just driving you home, what are you going on about, kind of thing. And she kept asking him and asking him. She even went as far as to write that very same night a letter, not a note, basically clearing Mac of any wrongdoing. So if he did actually agree to kill her and he killed her, she wrote, I guess, like a suicide note, but basically clearing him of her murder. If you can actually do that, that's what she did. I actually managed to find what was written in the letter, and I found it interesting, so I'm going to put it in. It actually said, March 20th, 1961. I want everyone to know what I'm about to do in no way implicates anyone else. I say this to make sure no blame falls on any other but myself. I have depressing problems that concern, for the most part, myself. I'm waging a war within myself, a war to find the true me, and I fear that I'm losing the battle. So rather than admit defeat, I'm going to beat a quick retreat into the no man's land of death, as I have only the will and not the fortitude necessary. A friend of mine, seeing how great is my torment, has graciously consented to look after the details. And so I guess Mac thought about it, and he agreed, because the next day, on the 21st of March in 1961, Betty was in a friend with, no, she wasn't in a friend. Please do not, nope. Like, no, backtrack. She was in a car with a friend, and it was a boy. So she's in there, it was quite late, I believe, she was chilling. And then these headlights pull up and she recognises the car. It's actually Mac's car. So she says goodbye to her friend. She rushes over to Mac's car and in she jumps. They drive off and Betty would not be seen alive again by anyone other than Mac. This section is pretty gruesome. I just want to put a warning again in here. This case is full of warnings. If you want to skip the details, then go on to the section where I'm talking about like the next day and her mother. They drove for 30 minutes. They headed up to Mac's dad's hunting property. And their sole intention was that Mac was going to end Betty's life as she had asked him to. According to Mac, which was stated later, she was in good spirits, she was chatty, she was happy. She was going on about how happy she was going to be when she was dead and how awesome heaven was going to be. And that just is so heartbreaking that she's talking like that. They then parked next to this stock tank, which is this big metal tank that is for watering animals, I believe. So obviously it's filled up with water. They sat in the car for a while, they chatted before they got out and walked towards this tank. Mac said that she was shivering, and as they walked towards the tank, he pulled out a 12-gauge shotgun that he had brought with him. That wasn't the only thing he brought. He brought rope, he brought weights, he brought the ammo and the shotgun, because he had a plan for what he was going to do with her after. They stopped near the tank. Betty asked for a kiss to remember him by, which he did. They kissed, which is where the name comes from, the kiss and kill murder. He then went to raise the gun. Betty grabbed the barrel of the gun, put it towards her temple, and then he pulled the trigger. And as you can imagine, a 12-gauge shotgun with it pointed at your temple does some damage. He basically blew her entire head off, pretty much, at point-blank range with just the sheer force of that shotgun. Don't go into the details. You can imagine how horrific it was. The next morning, Mary, her mother gets up and she is making breakfast, getting about her day, getting about the morning, and she's wondering why Betty hasn't come down for her breakfast. So she goes upstairs, Betty's not there. She thinks, oh, well, maybe she's gone to school early, who knows at this point. I don't know whether that was something she did, but that's what she thought. So she rings the school say that Betty has not turned up yet. And that is when she panics, and she does ring the police to report her daughter as missing. The police begin investigating, and naturally they go straight to the school because those are the people that are around her the most. Those are the people that may know something. So they start interviewing everyone one by one, and then they come across the guy who she was in the car with, who says that he was with her. Mac pulled up and then she left. She said goodbyes and they hadn't seen her since. So they pretty quickly established that Mac was the last person to be seen with her. They pull in Mac, they question him, who says, yeah, I was with Betty that night. It was about 10:30, 11 p.m. he picked her up. They was chilling out in the car or whatnot for a bit, and then he drops her off outside of her house at midnight. And then he doesn't actually see her go into the house, he just drives away. And he hasn't seen her since. And let me just say, please watch your friends go in the house. It's something that I would always do. And it just gives you a peace of mind that you know that they've definitely got in safely. So, yeah. The police didn't believe him. Let's just say it how it is. They did not believe him one little bit. And so they actually brought him into the station for questioning. Now, he was a minor, so his dad came too. And after about an hour of interrogation, he broke down to his father and he told him that he did in fact kill Betty Williams. He then led the officers to his dad's hunting property where Betty's body was. They go up to the stock tank and he tells them that she's inside. I think that they actually told him to get in the tank and pull her body out, which I do not understand at all. But he did. He jumps in there, he grabs her by the feet and he drags her out and then they pull her out. Did they not just want to get wet or something? I don't know, but that's what I read. So they recover Betty's body and obviously she has no head at this point. They noticed, before, I didn't actually mention it, as they're walking up, they noticed a ton of blood everywhere, which, what he did to her would have caused a lot of blood, as you can imagine. So, as I said, he brought the weights, he brought the rope, and he had actually weighed her body down so that nobody would find it. Although, why would you put it in a cattle stock tank? Surely if something's gonna drink, surely that gets changed. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know, maybe it's just rainwater and they just never change it, but a body rotting away in it would have just been, I don't know, super gross. The police were pretty shocked by the state of the body, but somebody that wasn't really shocked by the state of the body was Mac. He had no reaction whatsoever that he's just pulled this body out of the tank. Nah, it doesn't affect him whatsoever. He has no remorse, no grief, he's not in shock, he just seemingly doesn't care. Which I find really weird. Like, not if somebody asked me to come up to them and kill them, my answer would of course be no, and I would try and get them some mental help, no. And I would obviously try to get them some help and maybe talk to them or chat to them or whatever. But not only did he say yes, he witnessed what he did and it didn't affect him. It's weird. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in thinking that's weird? I think it's very weird. I just think it's really creepy that he just stood there and didn't say anything. He was just calm. Anyway, he told them the entire story as to what had happened, and of course he was arrested. The news spread quickly, but not in a way that anyone would want. It was all put on Betty, like she was the really bad one here. Like Mac had literally killed her. But they made out that she was this massive manipulator, that she must have tricked Mac into doing it, things like that. In fact, she just asked him nicely and he just agreed. That was the reality of it all, but they were twisting it all onto her. She was made out to be the villain and Mac was made out to be, I don't know, innocent, I guess. I'm not going to say the hero here, of course. And I just want to put in a side note here. This case is obviously very heavy with mental health, and what happened to Betty is absolutely devastating. So I just want to say, if any of you guys ever feel like that, please go and talk to someone. Please seek some help, because there is so much professional help out there nowadays. It wasn't available, as readily available. I don't even know whether it was at that time, when Betty was obviously thinking all these feelings. And just, rather than doing something that is so heartbreaking and so permanent, just try and talk to someone or try and get some help first, please. Just look after yourselves. Let's get back to Betty's tragic story. Everyone kind of rallied around Mac, and he had a lot of supporters around him. And I mean, to me, he murdered her, right? Am I wrong in that? He brought the gun, he brought the weights, he brought the rope. What kind of sick mind, I guess, must you have to agree to something like that? I cannot comprehend it whatsoever. So to me, it's just murder. Am I wrong? You're not allowed to assist anybody in suicide anyway. Like, you're not supposed to be allowed to do that. Only in certain countries you're allowed to do that. So I don't know. But he did all that. He brought all the things, tied her up and weighed her down in the water, and then he left. He went home, he acted normal, he went to school like nothing was up, like he hadn't just done what he had done. Can you just imagine all of that for just 1 second? And the fact that he was calm, collected, no reaction to it at all. That's not good signs in my eyes, but there you go. His family was decently well off. They got this top-end lawyer who basically figured that the only way that he was going to get Mac off was to go for the temporary insanity plea. And that is what they did. Apparently in Texas at the time, if you could prove that you were temporarily insane, you would get off with whatever the charge was without even having a trial. So that's what they were going for. They did have sort of a trial, but it wasn't for Betty's murder. It was basically a pre-trial inquest kind of thing to see whether Mac was temporarily insane when he did this to Betty. Obviously, the defense produced the letter that Betty had written, and they basically said that Betty was their best witness, which is absolutely heartbreaking to even think about. And don't forget, her family was at this trial listening to all of this, and I can't imagine. The students came forward to testify that Mac was a good person. He was a good student. He was just generally good. Other students came forward to testify how Betty had asked them to kill her. They brought forward a psychiatrist who did testify for the defense, and he said that Mac believed at the time that what he was doing for Betty was helping her and it was the only way to help her. And he believed that at the time that it was right. Like, how does a 17-year-old boy ever in a million years think that the right thing to do? Yes, okay, she was asking him to do it, but is that the right thing? The moral thing is to shoot her in the face. No, it's not. No, I don't think it is. I have no idea. Seriously, guys, I just don't know. But, you know, everyone basically believed everything. They had a lot of testimonies to say that Mac was this good guy and all them things, and that Betty did want someone to kill her, which she did, or at least she thought she did. And they basically said that Mac must have been temporarily insane when he killed Betty. And that was that. The crowd roared, people were cheering, people were hugging him, everyone was going mental that he had been declared insane temporarily. So temporarily, he's not even going to end up in, like, I don't know, like a mental health institute, because he was only temporarily insane. So, you know, he's completely normal now. I don't get it. Betty's parents slipped out of the back as the crowd started roaring because they just didn't want to hear all of that. People cheering and everything, and just so much behind Mac, who had literally killed their daughter. It's just so devastating. So they just, off they went. Obviously, as you can imagine, the prosecution were not happy with that. They basically put forward to the Texas Supreme Court that the judge who decided that he was temporarily insane did not have the authority to do so. And in 1962, the Supreme Court actually agreed. This meant that the judgment would be vacated, and then it was ordered that there would be a new trial for Mac. This time, it was whether he was guilty of Betty's murder. So the first one was his sanity, and this is why double jeopardy didn't come into play here, because the first trial that he had wasn't to find out whether he was guilty of Betty's murder. It was to find out his mental state. And now this trial was to find out if they thought he was guilty of Betty's murder. So double jeopardy wouldn't have affected it. The second trial started, and they moved it into a different place far away because they didn't want, as I said, when Mac's trial, pre-trial, whatever it was, started, he had tons of supporters. People were in there like fangirls supporting him. And it's just, they didn't want any of that. They wanted to give him a fair trial, of course they did, but they wanted to move it out. And, you know, despite that, the defense still managed to get in all his supporters. He had tons of people there for him again. Courthouse was absolutely packed with supporters of Mac. And the witnesses they had were strong, like I said, but the defense really did everything they could. They didn't have a motive. And I'm not saying that motive is the one thing that you need to basically convict someone of murder, because it's not. You don't actually need a motive, but it really helps for the jury to get their head behind as to why he did this. So they went with, like, you know, he was jealous. He killed Betty because he was jealous that she had slept with another guy when she was going out with him. But they got that guy up on the stand and he said, nah, you know, he was cool, we were friends, we figured out that our relationship was better and he just didn't care. So they tried those things, but they just couldn't get a motive. And without that, for the jury to wrap their heads around why he did this, why he did such a brutal and horrific thing to Betty, even though she asked him to do it, but why he actually did it, it's really, really difficult for them to get their head around, other than the fact that he must have been temporarily insane. Despite how hard they fought and everything, you know, they did, John Mac Herring was found not guilty of the murder of Betty Williams, and he was a free man. And that is how he lived his life. He lived his life in Texas, free as a bird. He still lived in the area that Betty's family did, so I guess they saw him all the time, which must have been awful for them, and just so hard as well. And he was just carrying on his life, something that Betty was not afforded to do. John Mac Herring actually passed away on the 5th of January in 2019, so just like 3 years ago, at the age of 75. I couldn't actually find what his cause of death was, so maybe, I don't know, natural causes. That's just an assumption. I don't actually know. To this day, the legend of Betty's ghost, if you believe in things like that, which is completely up to you guys, it's still believed that she haunts the auditorium of the school, and people claim that on many occasions they have seen the kiss and kill victim's ghost. Betty's cousin ended up writing a book that was published in 2006 called Washed in Blood, and he actually went forward to say that he honestly does not believe that Betty actually wanted to die. He said that Betty's father would often joke about killing himself and that she was much like him in that regard. And also, this is just my opinion here, but she was 17. She was going through hard times in her life, you know. Mac had split up with her. He was what she thought the love of his life. She was devastated. Then her career, what she had dreamed of, was sort of not crumbling. You know, just because one drama teacher doesn't think she's very good doesn't mean it's the end of the world. But for Betty, it was devastating. And then she obviously had her troubles at home as well. It seemed like those outside factors were the things that were making her depressed. Like before that, she was normal, she was fine, she was herself. I couldn't find any evidence of depression previous. So it seems like just those factors were the ones that were depressing her at that time. And if she could have just gotten through those, I honestly think that she would have had a future, a bright future. Who knows? She could have done. But her story would have been completely different, and I probably wouldn't be here talking about her today. It is such a heartbreaking case. Honestly, it's just... I truly believe that Betty didn't want to die, or at least she thought she did, but didn't really know. She said things like, oh, I'll be happy when I'm dead, and that makes no sense. So I just don't think she fully comprehended it all. This is just my opinion. And I just find it heartbreaking what actually happened to her. Let me know what you guys think on it. Do you think Matt should have been done for murder? Because that is what he did. Yes, she asked him to, but if someone asks you to kill them, does that mean you should do it? No, I don't think it does. Well, no, not think. It does not. It's illegal. So why he didn't get charged for it, I don't know. I don't think he was insane either. Temporarily insane. I don't know, maybe he just had a sick mind. I don't want to put too much flack on, obviously, John, because he lived till he was 75. He probably has a family out there, and I don't want to offend them in any way at all, but I don't know. Was he temporarily insane? Just let me know what you guys think on it. Do you think John was temporarily insane? Do you think that he should have been charged with murder? I'd like to know your thoughts on it. Do you think that Betty knew? I don't know, what she was doing was so permanent. Did she fully understand everything that she was asking? I'd just like to know what you guys think. So please let me know in the comments below. I find it very interesting and discussing, you know, your opinions of it all. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Betty Williams. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.